Hey everyone, and welcome. I want to share with you this exciting new enhancement to our Lean Design Simulator, which is the ability to process batch quantities at a particular resource, or more than one resource. So I want to walk through with you some simple examples of how this works as a training exercise. So let's start with the data file and just show you what our baseline data file looks like. It's a very simple one just for demonstration purposes. So we have 5 workstations, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and capacity is 1 for each of those, and no buffers or in-process Kanbans. And our flow, again, is equally simple. It's just a straight sequential flow from 1, 2 to 3 to 4 to 5. We have one product. We're keeping it very simple here. And here's something that I always do when I'm testing a system. It's kind of a technique that I stumbled across. What I do is in the process time table, I put in labor times of 1. And in that way, I can run the model and know pretty precisely what I expect to get. And so I can validate whether or not this model is working as expected pretty easily. And then, of course, later on, you'd put in the actual labor and machine times. And the sequence, no sequence, we only have one product, so I'm just putting in a nice healthy quantity of 1,000 units. So let's just run this, and I'll demonstrate to you what we can expect with this straight baseline example. So this is the Lean Design Simulator. I'm going to pick this file. It's called How to Add Batch Processing, version 1. And if you click on the Validate button, again, just a quick reminder, it's going to test the validity of the file, but it's somewhat redundant because when you click on Simulate, it also reruns that validation. So let's put in a healthy warm-up time. We have 5 stations in 1 minute, so it should be wetting the line in 5 minutes, right? It should be full. But let's be more generous than that. Doesn't do any harm, so I'm going to put in 50 minutes of warm-up time, and then let's run it for 100 minutes. I have no variability in there, so this checkbox doesn't do anything, but normally it would turn off any kind of variability of the times. All right, so before I click run, let's try to guess how many we expect to get. So once the line is full and we have process times of 1 minute per station and it runs for 500 minutes, I would expect to get 500 units. I hope you agree with me on that back of the napkin calculation. So let's run it and see what we get. Beautiful, 500, exactly as expected. Now let me demonstrate to you how to use the batch capability. So we've added a new column in the resource table, and you can see it over here on the right, batch size. So you can specify, default is 1, so single piece flow would be 1, and that's hopefully your normal condition. But if you have a batch quantity at a station, you can put it in here. So let's just, for sake of demonstration purposes, put in a number like 20. So the way this works then is this station 3, assembly 3, is going to accumulate units up to a quantity of 20 and then be able to run that quantity of 20. So the total processing time is going to be 20 minutes. It's going to run them one at a time, but it can't start until it completes that batch quantity. It has 20 available to it. Now here's a feature, I guess you could say, of the Lean Design Simulator. We've built in kind of a built-in buffer. So once that 20 is finished, that 20 gets moved to an internal buffer, if you will, so that the station 3, assembly 3, can continue to accumulate the next 20 and keep on working in that way. But while it's accumulating parts, no work is being done, and when it's running, it's processing those units one at a time, but nothing's leaving assembly 3 until all 20 are finished. Also, if there's first in, first out order specified in your sequence file, that sequence will be maintained. So FIFO will be maintained through assembly 3. So let's give it a try. I'm going to save this, and then I'm going to go back to the simulator. And we have to select another file. It's just the same file that we changed, but we have to reload it. So that's what I'm doing right now. So we're reloading it. I'll just click on Validate, and it should be fine. So the only change we made was we added a batch quantity of 20. So let's try to figure out, before I click simulate, what we expect. So 20 units need to be processed as a batch. When those 20 are being run, stations 1 and 2, because there's no buffering there, no IPKs, stations 1 and 2 are going to be stopped. So they'll be stopped for 20 cycles, and then the units in assembly 3 will be moved out, and stations 1 and 2 can run again. So approximately half the time, half of the cycles, assembly 1 and 2 are going to be stopped and not producing anything. That time is lost forever. We'll never get it back. So the expectation is we're going to get approximately half the number of units that we got before. Instead of 500, I would expect to get about 250 some, depending on the timing. So somewhere in that range. So let's click on simulate. I'm going to be a little bit more generous with the warm-up time and say put in 100 minutes of warm-up. Yes, 1 followed by 2 zeros. I'll get it. And then we'll run the same 500 minutes of runtime. Click that off. And again, our expectation is we're going to get somewhere in the range of half the number of units. So here we go, simulations in progress, and we got, ta-da, 253. Okay, so that meets our expectation. This is kind of what I do then for most models is I want to know what to expect ahead of time, and then I run the model, and if I'm way off, then I need to figure out why. It's not always the fault of the simulator. It could be just not understanding how the flow is working correctly. Now, let's do one more just to show you what you're probably going to need to do if you're designing a line with batch quantities. And here's the thing. Assembly 1 and 2 are stopped for approximately half the cycles, but we can overcome that by putting a buffer after assembly 2. So if we allow 20 pieces to accumulate after assembly 2, that would be essentially in front of assembly 3. So these can continue to accumulate while that batch of 20 is being run at assembly 3. Then potentially we could overcome that delay and get back to that 500 units that we actually would like to have. So let's see if this works. I'm going to save this, and I'm going to go back to the simulator, and I'm going to reload it. Choose another file. Again, same file, but we just made a small change to it. How to add batch processing. Open and simulate. So I'll do the same thing. I'll add 100 minutes of warm-up time. And I will add 500 minutes of runtime. And let's see. So expectation is to get back close to or equal to that 500 units that we had originally by adding the buffer. And there we go. We got back to the 500. So mission accomplished. So there's a lot you can do with this batch capability. You're not limited to one station. Every station could have some kind of batch capability. And of course, to improve the flow in a batch scenario like this, then buffering or the use of IPKs becomes really much more important. So there you go. We've just added this feature to the Lean Design Simulator. Enjoy, and we look forward to hearing from you in terms of how it's going or helping to answer any questions that you may run into. So bye-bye.